vaccine.
The woman has written to GPs to warn them to be on the lookout.
We're simply going to let doctors know the situation at the present. There is nothing particular, no action that they need to take. But because there's been so much in the press, we thought we should let doctors know the situation as we have it at the present.
Officials at the Public Health Laboratory Service in North London have reminded key GP practices to send in flu samples from patients for testing. It's only a precaution, but world flu experts have been concerned for some months that the new strain of flu could spread. So far, 7 people in Hong Kong have been affected, with 2 more suspected cases.
The majority of patients infected so far has been quite serious. Some are in intensive care, so it is serious, and the scientific community and the medical community are treating it as such.
This century, millions have been killed by flu pandemics. In 1918, Spanish flu killed 40 million. People eventually developed immunity to it, and it died out. In 1957, it was replaced by another new strain, Asian flu. This lasted until 1968, when it gave way to Hong Kong flu. 1977 saw an epidemic of so-called red flu. Now, 2 people in Hong Kong have been killed by the new chicken flu. Experts fear it could spread.
It is a new virus unknown to humans, so if it really gets into humans easily, it will cause severe disease from what we know, and as there is no immunity in the human population, it will then spread through the population, perhaps worldwide.
Scientists are now planning to incorporate the new strain into future flu vaccines, but that won't be possible for many months. James Wilkinson, BBC News.
More than 100 veterans from the Gulf War have decided to hand back their medals in protest at the government's handling of Gulf War syndrome. They claim many of their colleagues have already died from the illness and have accused the government of abandoning them. Their mass protest will take place at the Ministry of Defence next month on the 7th anniversary of the start of the war.
In the violent landscape of the Gulf War, there can be no doubt that many soldiers were exposed to potentially dangerous chemicals. Years after the fighting stopped, thousands of troops who served with the coalition forces are reporting the chronic fatigue and other symptoms now associated with Gulf War syndrome. It's claimed 140 British soldiers have died as a direct result of the illness.
The reason why we're so dissatisfied is because virtually nothing is being done in this country apart from research which has already been completed in America, and it's very, very urgent now that something is done on a more practical level, because Gulf veterans are literally dying. We're losing nearly 2 a month on average since the end of the war.
Many who serve with the British forces are convinced that the vaccinations and drug cocktails designed to keep them safe are in fact at the root of the problem. Ministers say they're doing all they can to find the truth.
While I can do as I have done, launch a large number of initiatives to help Gulf War veterans in the meantime, doubling the resources, the medical assessment programme, the new research into vaccines, the publication of all information. What I can't do is play God and pretend that I know the cause.
Gulf War veterans have worn their medals with pride. It's an indication of their frustration that many are now prepared to hand back what was won on the field of battle. Jeremy Cook, BBC News.
Secrecy over the plans for the Millennium Dome at Greenwich could undermine the project's future, according to an all-party committee of MPs. The Commons Culture Committee says unless the public is given more details soon, marketing the exhibition will be put in jeopardy. It's also concerned about transport plans for visitors.
Next story. The Millennium Dome will be magnificent and breathtaking. The committee thinks the Millennium experience it'll house is a great opportunity for a national celebration. But the members are worried. They question the forecasts of the numbers who'll visit the site. And in their report revealed at a press conference today, they say the target of £150 million in sponsorship is enormously ambitious and worry about what happens if it isn't met. One of the biggest concerns is lack of information about the exhibition itself. Trying to find out what'll be in the dome was akin to drawing teeth, the committee says. From what we know so far, the Millennium experience is not so much a journey through time as a journey into the unknown. The committee also says it's deeply concerned about whether London Underground's new Jubilee line will be able to cope with the numbers expected, and about the fact that the organisers haven't yet started marketing the exhibition to travel agents and tour operators. It says there's still too much secrecy surrounding the event.
We want it to succeed. We believe we need a great deal more organisation and a great deal more information for it to succeed, and we shall be pressing for that, and we shall be doing what nobody else can do. That is, holding inquiries, getting the information, getting private financial information, and pushing and pushing and pushing, so that in the year 2000 this will be a huge success for Britain.
The organisers say they'll be publishing full details of what will be in the exhibition for the public and the travel trade in the first 3 months of next year. But as one member of the committee said this morning, though the organisers are enthusiastic about the exhibition, his constituents still have to be convinced. Nick Hyam, BBC News, Westminster.
The Committee on Standards in Public Life has launched a long-awaited inquiry into party funding. It's requesting that all the main political parties give details of their sources of cash over the past 5 years, but without naming individual donors. Our political correspondent John Pienaar joins me now from Westminster. John, what exactly does Lord Neil want the parties to do?
Well, Lord Neil's starting what looks like a very wide-ranging inquiry indeed, and what he's asked for is details from all the parties of where they got their money from in the past 5 years, and broadly how much. Now, he's not asking for details of who gave that money, which is information which, as we know, has the capacity to embarrass all parties and all governments. Labour found that out over the Formula One affair. Labour even so said that they would name their donors if the Tories did the same. The Tories haven't. Lord Neil isn't asking them to, and the Tories say they'll cooperate with this as well as the other parties.
Why isn't he going as far as asking them to name names?
Well, he believes that he doesn't need to have that kind of detail to discuss whether or not more openness is needed in the whole system of party funding. But it will be a very wide-ranging inquiry indeed. He'll look at the question of state funding of political parties. We know the Prime Minister says he's unconvinced about that, but we know that Lord Neil is now saying he'll make firm recommendations.
John Pienaar, thank you. The Labour MP for Glasgow Govan, Mohamed Sawar, will appear before Glasgow Sheriff Court this afternoon, charged with electoral fraud. Mr Sawar was suspended from the party when the allegations first surfaced after the general election in May. The charges include the late registration of voters and breaking the law on election expenses. If found guilty, he could be disqualified from continuing as an MP. Admiralty Arch, the listed building in central London that was once home to the first Sea Lord, has been put to a new use as a refuge for the homeless. The charity Centrepoint has been given permission to use part of the building as a winter shelter for 60 young people.
On the Strand this morning, there were still rough sleepers braving the freezing temperatures, just yards away from food and warmth at the new Admiralty Arch shelter.
Oh, I've got to feed this lad up. He's only been here 5 days.
Inside, the Deputy Prime Minister was reliving his days as a ship's steward, serving breakfast to one of the shelter's first residents. The controversial idea of using the arch came from a former brigadier in the Royal Tank Regiment, who was given the task of finding bed spaces within half a mile of Trafalgar Square.
I was actually cycling down the Mall, and of course you saw Admiralty Arch. Yeah, that's within half a mile of Trafalgar Square, surrounded in hoarding, and obviously some work and activity was taking place, so why not? Let's give it a go.
There was a small problem. The first Sea Lord was still occupying a flat in the building, but once he'd moved out, the workmen moved in. Architects had to ensure that all their changes to the Grade 1 listed building were reversible when it ceases to be a shelter in the spring. Centrepoint have installed security cameras to ensure the safety of the building and its residents. The views are impressive. Nelson's Column from one side, Buckingham Palace from the other. The charity expects it to fill up quickly.
A number of the people that are currently sleeping on the Strand are on a waiting list run by one of the outreach teams, and we're expecting there to be a noticeable decrease in the number of young rough sleepers in the West End as of tonight.
The first homeless have already moved in, still bemused by their new surroundings.
Well, I didn't know it was a famous London landmark, so I mean it's quite a shock, but I mean it's a cool idea. You know, you could actually say to someone, oh, I live there.
There's no telling what the arch could be used for next. Suggestions include a restaurant or offices for the proposed elected Mayor of London. John Andrew, BBC News, Admiralty Arch.
And joining me now from Admiralty Arch is the Chief Executive of Centrepoint, Victor Adebowale. Victor, it's a very unusual venue, isn't it? Is it all a bit of a gimmick?
No, there's nothing gimmicky about housing 300 young people in some of the coldest weather we've seen. I mean, we are absolutely freezing out here. So you can imagine what it's like if you haven't got any shelter in the middle of the night, you haven't got any shelter during the day. This is nothing gimmicky about this. This is serious stuff.
But there has been criticism that the building is simply not appropriate for this sort of use.
Well, really, I'm really surprised that people say that. The building is in the perfect location. It has enough room, it is warm, it is precisely what we need to provide a safe and comfortable emergency shelter for over 300 young people over the winter months. And really, people, of course, will criticise, but at the end of the day, what I'm concerned about is the safety of young people. And those young people in that building are happy to be there and will be happy to receive the services that we're going to provide them over the next few months.
Do you think it's going to put pressure on other people who have vacant property, the government, for example, to open their doors to more homeless people?
Well, I hope so. We've had cooperation from the government and from a number of private organisations. But you know, the real issue here is that over the next few months, Centrepoint has launched our winter campaign, and it's about getting young people out of boxes, not just the boxes on the street, but some of the boxes that are in people's minds, about boxes of poverty and unemployment. And what we're really trying to do is make the point that over the Christmas period, we can't afford to have young people, 16-year-olds, on the streets of any city that need to be in the warm.
Victor, thank you, and don't get too cold out there.
Thank you, Jenny.
And indeed, heavy snow and high winds have been causing chaos on the roads in some parts of the country. The West Country, Wales and the Midlands have been worst affected, with rail and air services disrupted by drifting snow up to 4 feet deep in places. The Met Office has warned that the bad weather is heading north.
Devon was hardest hit by the overnight snow, which made journeys to work early this morning hazardous and in some cases impossible. Air temperatures of -1 or 2 became -10 with the wind chill of the icy blast from Siberia. Some drivers abandoned their cars in snow which drifted in places up to 4 feet deep. The RAC said many vehicles were out of condition and unprepared for the wintry weather. Breakdowns in England and Wales have been running at more than 4 times normal levels. Motorists struggled on treacherous main roads throughout the south. Some rail and air services were also disrupted. As accidents like this one in the Brecon Beacons were repeated across the affected area, several police forces warned people not to set out in their cars unless they had to. Conditions are getting worse in mid-Wales, where several main roads are shut. Thousands of pupils were told not to turn up for school today. In Devon, more than 50 schools closed. In South and West Wales, 5 times that number followed suit. The snow's expected to move northwards during the day, threatening passes on the Pennines and reaching Scotland by evening. There should be milder weather by the weekend, but bookmakers have cut the odds on a white Christmas to 2 to 1, the shortest odds for more than 20 years. George Eakin, BBC News.
And the time now is 14 minutes past 1.